Welcome to the Never Die podcast, your weekly crypto alpha for those who never quit. Today we have on Sandeep and Marc from Polygon. And if you haven't been paying attention, Polygon has been absolutely cooking and building some of the greatest tech in the space. And their AggLayer is maybe one of the coolest advancements in crypto today. When fully live, the AggLayer will enable users to move between chains in seconds and execute really complex cross-chain transactions with a single click of a button. Where previously chains were like islands, stranded on their own, far apart from each other, with the AggLayer, they're unified all together into one big super internet of chains. In this podcast, we talk about the AggLayer, the upcoming Pol token, Polygon's POS upgrade, and everything in between. Welcome to the podcast, guys. It's great to have you, Sandeep. It's great to have you, Marc. Maybe we could just start off having one of you guys explain really simply, what is the aggregation layer?
So it was never the end goal for us to have, let's say, a chain which has 500 TPS, 1000 TPS. Like a lot of projects will, claim this, right? We have 20,000, 50,000 TPS, 100,000 TPS. For us, the goal is to create a network which can have infinitely increasing TPS, like billion TPS, 2 billion TPS. Is there any protocol right now which can claim that they can have a billion TPS? Probably not. Is there any protocol who can say that they are on path to build something which can have that kind of TPS? Probably not. And with AggLayer and whatever we do at Polygon, like the end game is always that. And you would ask, like, why do you need like 1 billion TPS and all that? My point is, if you compare it with the current Web 2 internet, Web 2 internet is literally like that. Like it has literally billions of TPS, right? As many applications come in, more servers get created. It's like practically infinitely scalable. So that's the first part. So AggLayer is basically what I call it is like in my simplistic terms, just kind of a blockchain of blockchains. Is a blockchain where any sovereign blockchain can connect and people can have their assets or interactions moving to and fro between these chains without knowing that there are multiple chains. Like, so these thousands and thousands and even potentially in future millions of chains, they feel like one single chain. That is the user level objective or the definition of AggLayer. Like one underlying infrastructure where users can have their assets or users can interact on any blockchain whatsoever, and wherever their value, their assets are, they are able to interact with any other chain. They don't even know that from which chain or what infrastructure to what infrastructure their assets are moving. That's the very simplistic user-centric view of AggLayer.
Yeah, no, Jesse, one thing that I'd add to that is like, if you think of like, a lot of people think of it, AggLayer is short for aggregation layer. So what they think of is like aggregation. Now, first, I'm not sure many people know like kind of what aggregation really technically kind of like refers to, but the AggLayer really goes beyond that. And I think like maybe to help people picture like from a user experience perspective, like what is this actually doing? There's like 3 like key things that we want to achieve with like the AggLayer. Number one, and this is where you actually get true aggregation, is gas optimization. Is what we're trying to do is say, hey, users, we want you to pay less per transaction. And as a result of that, what we're going to do is that when we have kind of ZK proofs, we're going to aggregate those proofs together, keep wrapping them in another proof and in another proof before we ever submit them to L1. This drives down the cost. It gets amortized over all users. So number one is users get lower fees on all the chains that are connected to the AggLayer. Number two is, to Sandeep's point, right? Like our goal really, right, is to create this network that feels like one, but is infinitely scalable. But to do that, the part that's been missing from all the cross-chain interactions that we have today is this idea of like asset fungibility, right? Is this idea of like you have an asset and it is ETH. and you are used to just being able to transfer ETH from one place to another. But actually what's happening cross-chain is you're actually transferring ETH and then you're receiving wrapped ETH. And as a user, if you think about that, you go into your wallet and you see like W ETH and then XYZ ETH and ABC ETH, and you're like, I have no idea what to do. Right. And so when you think of like this idea of asset fungibility that the AggLayer is doing for cross-chain transactions, what it's really doing is we're not going to make you worry about that. There's one asset, and that is the only asset that gets used across all these networks. Only ETH exists. And so that allows for users to just have that feeling of like one chain and nothing else. And then the last thing that it ultimately does is it allows for these cross-chain transactions to happen in a safe way at lower latency than Ethereum. Right. And so right now, the problem is if users want to transact across chain, they need to actually go back to Ethereum and then to another chain. That is slow. What we want to do is say, hey, this actually needs to feel like one network. And therefore, we need to get you to being able to transact quickly across these chains. And in initial days, it's not going to be as quick as that like unified feeling of like one monolithic chain. But with time, as this develops, the latency will get down to a point where you will be able to transact in a way that actually feels like you are on kind of one chain. And so now you have the benefit as a user of, I'm going to use a chain that's going to feel great. It's going to scale well. And by the way, when I need to execute a transaction on another chain, I'm not even going to know it. And it's going to happen safely in a low latency way. Which really results in this optimal user experience where you don't have these gas spikes that happen, bottlenecks that exist in the infrastructure, and really kind of like these three parts of the AggLayer kind of allow for this like optimal user experience across chains.
Okay, but can you explain again? So for the average user, like imagine I want to move money from the POS chain, or when it becomes a Validium, I want to move money from Polygon's chain, their main chain, to OKX chain. Explain how that would feel like as the end user. What am I doing? Am I going over to a bridge and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to bridge some money?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. So I think there's a few different things we could talk about here. One of them is, so you could think of like and this is always the case, right? There's the base protocol, and then there's like the UX that is built on top of the protocol, right? And at its core, AggLayer is really just that base protocol. It allows for that safety, that fungibility, and really those like low gas costs. But one of the things that we're very actively working on with others in the ecosystem is how to create that UX that is actually ideal, right? And you could see that you'll see like emerge like multiple versions of like the UX. One that you can imagine, right, is an app developer that says, hey, I want to ensure that users can easily use assets on other chains. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build in functionality into our app, which will make very easy for them. And when we're on that app and we say, hey, we want to, buy this NFT, then what you're ideally going to use in the ideal UX is you're going to use a wallet that's going to recognize the assets that you have on every chain. You're not going to need to pick which assets that you want to use, or theoretically, if the UX is you do want to pick, you can pick. And then you're going to say, hey, I need, this, 5 USDC to buy, whatever this asset is. And I'm going to, execute a transaction to buy that asset. I'm not going to worry about the fact that asset is on the USDC is on another chain. All I'm going to do is execute a transaction. That is the exact same experience that you get on like a monolithic chain. Now, one thing that we're doing that goes like, I'd say a step further than this, and I'd argue it's even a step further than the user experience you currently have on one monolithic chain. We've built a library that we refer to as like bridge and call. Effectively, what you can think of it is combining multiple transactions into one like user transaction. So if you think of like the experience that you have today, right, you would bridge an asset from Ethereum over to, Polygon zkEVM, and then you would kind of you would then transfer that asset over to A-star zkEVM, and then you would, if you have a cross-chain kind of a transaction, you would then purchase something on AggLayer, for example. What bridge and call library does is it effectively allows you to do all of that in one transaction. So the user can go ahead and basically say, I want to buy this NFT that is on this chain, that, let's say on AggLayer, but I have assets that are on POS. And so I'm going to, in this one click, I'm going to bridge my asset to POS, exchange it for some other asset that I actually need. Let's say I bridge ETH and I purchase USDC. And then in that same click, you're using that USDC to purchase the NFT on AggLayer, for example. And so what you've basically got is like multiple transactions that are built into one. And if you think about this, I use the experience of like bridging from Ethereum and doing that. You don't need to, right? You could already be sitting on a chain, on an L2 already. But when you think of like the typical experience we go through today, what do we do? We like go to a DEX and we purchase an asset on a DEX. Then we take that asset, we go to a new front end, and then we deposit that into, let's say, Aave, all right? And then you take what you got out of Aave, and then you go and you buy whatever you want to buy from with those assets. It actually doesn't really make sense that you need to execute 3 separate transactions on 3 separate sites. And this is part of like what this bridge and call library allows. You could go ahead and in the same transaction, you could swap those assets on Uniswap, deposit into Aave, receive the assets on Aave, and then use that to purchase whatever it is that you want to purchase. And so you kind of ultimately have that potential for that UX. But again, that library is also just like a core library. What we need and what we are working on is that UX, whether it's on the apps or built into wallets, where you ultimately don't actually feel like you're thinking about all of these different things. You're just doing it with, 1, maybe 2 clicks.
And how fast would it be to move between these things? Like you're saying 1 to 2 clicks, but am I waiting like 10 minutes for these things to like bridge over? Is it quicker than that, slower than that? How does that work?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about like a sequence in time, right? It's like the when it is that like as the AggLayer evolves, the answer is it's going to get faster and faster, and we'll get to a point where what we're talking about is like seconds, if not sub-second transactions is really what we're looking at. But initially we're talking about like much slower, right? Like our initial goal would be like something, again, sub 10 minutes, cut it down even lower, right? And so, but the end goal, and it's like, it's not just a goal, like we know it, we can do it, is going to be like seconds, if not sub-second.
And when you say end goal, like, is that like in the next 10 years, in the next 5 years? Like, when do you expect it to be, like, let's say under 30 seconds?
Well, next year for sure.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, we'll be like our views. We need to be under 10 minutes by the end of this year, and in the seconds next year.
Okay, I'm going to paint a picture, and I just want you to tell me if I'm right. Again, this is for the average retail investor, doesn't really understand these things. Right now, today, I want to move my money over to a new chain, new L2 launches. I have to go to their native bridge. I'm going to bridge from Ethereum to that chain, and that might take 10, 15 minutes for me to bridge. And now we have like chains launching their own L2s on these L3s and L2s. So maybe like an app chain launches on that, and they have to bridge from that app chain, from that L2 to the app chain, and wait another 10 minutes. And it's like I have to specifically go to a bridge, choose which funds I'm going to bridge over, bridge those funds over. That's a transaction. And then once I get the funds over there, I could do things with them. AggLayer, very different in that if I want to move funds between Polygon's main chain and AggLayer or Astar, I don't have to think about that. That's not like a thing I think about. I don't think about like, I need to bridge my funds over. I think, wow, I want to go over here to Astar and use this app. I'm going to click and use this app. Even though my funds aren't on there, it doesn't matter. Because in the bridge and call, in one transaction, the stuff's just going to happen in the background. I don't have to worry about that stuff happening in the background. I just get to use this cool app. Or, oh, cool, a new gaming chain launched as a part of the AggLayer. I want to go buy this NFT on it. I don't have to worry about bridging my funds over. I just go use it as if I'm using a website. Like, it's not like I have to bridge over my internet connection to like new websites or something. I can't even think of a good analogy there, but it's like literally just like anything I want to use within the AggLayer ecosystem, I could just go use it. without having to worry about this weird concept of bridging, and it just makes the user experience a lot cleaner and a lot easier. And it makes it so that the liquidity between these chains can just kind of flow. It just flows around to where it's like more optimized to be. And you get these weird network effects, these awesome network effects, that every chain that joins the AggLayer contributes to this really giant pot of liquidity that just keeps growing and growing, attracting more and more chains. And that's kind of like maybe the end goal would be that like it becomes the internet of all blockchains. Like all blockchains are plugged into the AggLayer, and this is where everyone goes to do everything, because it just becomes too much of a temptation to join when you have all this liquidity attached to the network. Is that a good way to summarize it?
Yeah, it's a good way to summarize it. And I think like to maybe touch on the number one headache when you think of people using L2s, what is it? And the answer is it's the bridging experience from Ethereum to the L2. And the thing is that when a new chain launches, what all of them do is they all want to go to centralized exchanges and have them allow people to send funds like directly to that L2 from the centralized exchange. The thing is, like, centralized exchanges don't want to support every single L2 out there. It's not that easy. Many of them will never be huge, which is fine. They have a specific purpose, and that's all right. One of the things that's really cool about the AggLayer is when Polygon POS joins the AggLayer, what now every single chain on the AggLayer gets is that exact same UX. They don't have to have users deal with the idea of actually bridging from Ethereum to their chain anymore. Instead, what they get is they get a entry point to their chain from every single centralized exchange. Why is that? Because Polygon POS already has that integrated with every major exchange in the world. And so you can right now, from any major exchange in the world, you just send your assets to Polygon POS. You never have to worry about sending them through Ethereum first. And so when you think of another chain that spins up and joins the AggLayer, those users and those devs who built that chain, they don't have to worry about going and being like, hey, is there going to be an exchange connection? There already is. It's through Polygon POS. So they'll just send their funds from that centralized exchange directly to that chain through Polygon POS, and they never have to worry about that experience being bad in the way that it is today.
That's amazing. And I feel like that's a really good, clear picture of the AggLayer and what it's the concept behind it. But I do want to kind of throw it back and ask again, what sort of unique use cases could you see evolving in an ecosystem like this? There's got to be some, like, right now we have general chains, right? Like every chain's like Ethereum. Like it's I do everything chain. I think of like AOL, right? AOL was the website. They did everything. Email, weather, news, like everything was on AOL. That's kind of how all blockchains are today. But what about like having specialized blockchains? Like this one's for privacy. This one's for security. This is an AI chain, or app chain, whatever. What sort of unique things can you imagine would evolve in an ecosystem like the AggLayer that you just couldn't get anywhere else? You couldn't get it on Solana. You couldn't get it on Ethereum.
If like you gave an example of, let's say, like, you know, what is something that's not possible on, let's say, anywhere else, like Solana, for example, you gave it, right? So if you see that the recent resurgence of Solana, what was the new use case that Solana enabled? Was there any new use case?
No.
It's just old use cases with just UX. Like, you know, you prove that Solana proved that, you know, let's say if you have an extremely nice UX and you have these, like, you know, fast trading, like, you know, very nice UX wallets and all that, and then, you know, some of these, the meme coin frenzy happened and all that, but they were not like new use cases. And my point is, like, the existing use cases, if you see any reasonable game which started getting any reasonable amount of traction, any social platform, any other kind of consumer application, the moment they start picking up traction, immediately they are enough. Like, I know, like, at least 500 founders in person, like, you know, personally, who, you know, have decently successful application, let's say on Polygon POS, and few of them, like, over time in the last 3-4 years became popular. And the moment they start becoming popular and they're like, oh my god, my gas cost is just too high, and they start, you know, they start approaching us that how if we can help them and all those things, right? Which is becomes super hard to do at scale. So, but with these app chains, basically now with some of the app chains, like the things that we are also building, and once they come on the on fully on production, people will be able to sustain like 1,000 TPS kind of numbers, and they can easily take, let's say, daily 5 to 10 million transactions, which means like maybe 1 to 5 million DAUs. I think I see it as like industry wide, like 2017, literally like few thousand, if you see CryptoKitties movement, few thousand users on Ethereum is choked. Comes 2021, 2022 with Polygon POS being there, Solana being there, and all that, we saw few applications like Axie Infinity reaching like 1 million DAU day and all that. And then even now the total DAU across all the chains, and you must be seeing like Polygon POS, Tron and BSC are like at the top DAU kind of chains on many days. But still, if you total it out, everything including the on-chain users are hardly 1 million users a day. And what we want as an industry is, we want, like I see as the next progression in this cycle, let's say 2024 2025 cycle, is that we see some applications, not one but multiple applications, which have somewhere between 1 to 5 million users, daily active users, right? And that is what AggLayer can enable at scale. Because you can say, okay, app chains can happen without AggLayer also, right? But the moment it happens, then this bridging and all that, like UX will start becoming a bottleneck, right? Because app chains are already here. There are multiple app chains. Many applications have like more than 100, 200, 300 chains are there. But now the next stage is, okay, now each of these applications and app chains have scale. How do you kind of give a unified experience to all of them? With not only, when we talk, like people should not mistake it only as experience, like AggLayer as only as experience. The AggLayer provides you that fundamental bedrock of the base security across these chains, which connects them, because the interoperability bridges can also provide. AggLayer is not a bridge. AggLayer is a security mechanism which allows these chains to connect with each other, safely. And you are going to see multiple top bridge providers and the interop protocols integrating AggLayer as a native engine for that safety soon. So basically, you asked like how new use cases. I'm like, we don't need new use cases. We need the current use cases to go to multiple apps with million DAU user days, and that's when we'll start. Some of these apps will really start having accruing value. Right now we all, like we keep talking, right? There is like 1,000 chains and 100 builders, right? 100 apps, and also those apps do not get enough value accrual, right? In terms of like those protocols and all that. And I think, like once the apps will start picking up really some traction, some revenue and all those things, when they can scale to few million users, that will bring in a lot of value accrual to the apps, and then that will explode. Like you just need few big apps which have like a real sustained revenue and value accrual. You will see huge amount of like web 2 money coming in, and everything coming in to again further grow the applications. So I'm not expecting new use cases. I'm expecting the current use cases to get turbocharged and reach to the next levels of sustainability in terms of their actual building of those community businesses.
I think one of the ways that this cycle will see Polygon, the AggLayer, get to millions of daily active users, in my opinion, is going to be crypto gaming. And you guys have become just a powerhouse in the crypto gaming sector with Ronin joining the AggLayer. You have Immutable. And I think between Ronin, Immutable, and just Polygon, that's got to be the vast majority of the market share as far as games go.
That's, I think, like more than, by numbers, it will be more than 95%. There's like who is left after that. So, yeah.
That's insane. And that's a great...
And we believe, like, as I'm saying, like, we believe that gaming is going to be that breakout use case. And we are slowly and steadily going towards that. And that is going to need something like this, which we are describing here, right? Without that one single chain having, like, no matter what TPS you want to say that chain has, not enough. N is equals to constant, not enough. N has to be like the number of TPS available on the chain or the network has to be constantly growing. More demand, more TPS.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. And that's a perfect example of like games want their own chains. They want to be able to control that environment. But at the same time, that's a lot of infrastructure building and managing validators and tokenomics, all this kind of crazy stuff they have to learn to just build a game. And so you have these teams that are maybe good at that stuff, but they're not good at building games. And then you got the teams that are good at building games, but they're not good at building that stuff. You guys provide the solution. So like the best builders when it comes to games, they can just spin up an AggLayer chain through Immutable, through Ronin, whatever. They have their own chain, and as they need more capacity, just like you said, spin up another server. They spin up another chain, and those chains are, but both together on the AggLayer. So it's not like they're separate environments, and that enables a lot of like maybe cross game. I don't know how huge that'll be or not, but it does enable like a lot of cross game potential interaction and maybe some really big marketplaces for these game assets to be built within the AggLayer, which you want not a lot of friction between buyers and the sellers of these assets. So yeah, I think that might be how you get to a couple million users this cycle. At least that's my belief, and it sounds like maybe you guys also believe that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely buy that. Yeah, and I think that gaming, sometimes we limit ourselves in thinking of what those cross-chain interactions are going to be for gaming, right? It's like if you just, all you have to do is think of the most simple potential use case in gaming. I want to buy this, skin, this asset in a game. That is, shown as like an NFT. That alone requires you to have funds to execute that purchase. And when you are on one gaming, you're a gamer, and you're on one chain that is connected to the AggLayer. You love a game over there. You're playing it. You have funds over there. You find another game that you love on another chain. You shouldn't need to worry about getting new assets on that other chain. You should worry about, hey, the assets I want to purchase on that other chain, I need to be able to do it easily. And just the fact that you can just simply purchase them, just that simply, because you had assets on the other chain on the AggLayer, is very powerful in the sense that you allow these games to, again, have their own environments, as we're talking about, and actually scale the way they need. But you allow users to like retain that great experience. And payments in games is a huge use case. That alone, you're going to see millions and millions and millions, billions of transactions cross chain just because somebody has an asset on one chain. They want to buy. They have USDC on one chain, then they want to buy an asset on another chain. And so I don't even think we need to think of like, and there's plenty of like more complex things that we can think through, especially when you think of like more interesting tokenomics tied to games, things like that you could think that would happen cross chain. But even when you think of the most simple use case, you're talking about millions and millions of cross chain transactions happening.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think maybe meme coins or celeb coins are going to onboard the masses, but I am a diehard believer that this cycle, we will see more users onboarded via gaming than we've seen through anything else, period. Like the amount of users that are going to onboard via crypto gaming this cycle is going to be mind-blowing, in my opinion. And you guys are set up here with like 95% market share. So if you're bullish on crypto gaming, you have to be bullish on the Polygon ecosystem and the AggLayer controlling 95% of that. That is just wild. I don't even understand how that ended up happening. That is so exciting to me. Okay, so from my understanding, there's 3 phases of the aggregation layer. Phase 1 is live, and the other 2 phases are like coming at some point this year. Or can you explain, is that still how it's set up? Are the 3 phases, and how does that work?
Yeah, I can take that. So you could think of like, people describe the current phase in different ways. Some just describe it as a component of the AggLayer, which I think might be accurate, or you could call it like V0.1. The current version is really just this unified bridge. It really doesn't have, the things like aggregation. It has the native asset, right? You have one native asset across the chains that are connected to the AggLayer, and you have some level of security. The next version of the AggLayer is what we're going to kind of refer as to like the version with the pessimistic proof, right? It'll be kind of V 1.0. It'll be what we consider like the first true version of the AggLayer being live. It'll still be decentralized, but safe. Again, because of the pessimistic proof, it'll be safe, but it'll be run in kind of a centralized fashion. And that is where we're going to work on kind of driving down the kind of latency on cross-chain transactions as far down as possible. And then what you'll see in the third version is decentralizing the AggLayer, where you're not going to have one kind of centralized body running the AggLayer, but instead it's going to look more like you could think of it as like a set of validators almost that are going to be kind of running the AggLayer.
And when do you expect that? I don't know if you can say anything, but when do you like ballpark expect that third layer to be live?
We're very focused on the second version, right? we want to get that live and we want it to be the best user experience possible. And so we like the third version will be next year. Like that will happen. Like we already have a team that is kind of researching it, working on it. But the real focus is how we get that second version out as soon as possible.
Like I was going to say, no, next year, like, this year only, this year. Like, let's see, like, we keep debating this. Like I keep pushing everyone, like, no, we need fast. But yeah, we are working, like, the next version is going to be like, basically, one of the, like, I mean, it will be pretty significant milestone for the industry, like the bigger one, the decentralized version of it, the phase 3.
I guess then my question is like, when will I kind of feel that user experience? Maybe that's the more important thing. When does a user plug into AggLayer and is like, wow, this is insane. I can't do this anywhere else. I can move between chains like this. This is crazy. Is that phase 2? Is that phase 3? Is that somewhere in between?
That'll be phase 2. Like you'll see that in Q3, people get that initial feeling. They're not going to feel like, oh, this is crazy, because we were talking about still like sub 10 minutes, not more than that. But what will be crazy is like the idea of like cross-chain transactions with no wrapped assets, being able to do that in a secure way and doing it in less than kind of Ethereum latency. So I'll call it like the average user is not going to look at that and be like, oh, this is like a Web 2 like experience. What they're going to feel is like, hey, this is a new kind of breakthrough from like a Web3 perspective in terms of like what a cross-chain experience can feel like. And I feel like it's only early next year that we'll start getting that kind of like cross-chain latency down far enough that a user's like, oh, not only do I have this like native asset that I don't have to worry about wrap, but I also get it at increasing like super fast speeds. Cross-chain, early next year is when they're like really going to feel that difference, but it'll be progressive.
And how many chains are in the AggLayer today or like plugged into it?
Plugged one, I think it's like 5.
And where would you guess 5 years from now? Ballpark number. How many chains are plugged in the AggLayer 5 years from now?
As I just now, bro, I just now said like 5 years is too late, too long. Like I am saying end of this, like my target for myself was end of this year, 100 chains. But now it's like, when we go in September, maybe 100 is a kind of a higher target. Maybe end of this year, still we'll push for 50. And end of next year, 1,000 chains connected into AggLayer.
Is there any downside for a chain who wants to join the AggLayer? They want to join the AggLayer. Are they paying tax? Is Polygon doing a shakedown of like, hey, 5% to join the AggLayer of all your transactions? Like, how does that work?
So that is also like, I originally told you, like one of the like majority, like the economic thesis behind AggLayer is like it should be as free markets aligned as possible, right? So the moment you add like this 5%, 10% sequencer fees and all that, this kind of becomes like a rent-seeking, behavior. And then, you can attract few people into such kind of system, but beyond a certain time. And as I said, like go back to again the mission. Mission is like we do not want to build something which has X amount of scalability, right? Like we want infinitely scalable. So we need to build an environment where anybody can join without sacrificing their sovereignty and all that. So on AggLayer, there is no sequencer fee sharing. It's AggLayer service. AggLayer is a service, right? And you pay as you go. You don't pay a monthly rent on like in a way, like I'm saying monthly rent means you don't pay a fixed rent on AggLayer, whether it's duration based, whether it's transaction based and all that. You use AggLayer, like for example, like if you are running a gaming chain and you want your users to connect or to be able to withdraw their assets to other chains every 6 hours. So you just put, let's say, a pessimistic proof on AggLayer every 6 hours, up to you, and you pay literally pennies to the AggLayer, right? Whereas you are a DeFi chain and you want your users to literally be able to run like cross-chain aggregated, like these aggregator swaps, right? Like which are DEX aggregator swaps, right? Where this fund needs extreme movement, and you as a DeFi chain, you are posting your pessimistic proof like every, let's say, 30 seconds, right? And then you are paying a little bit more service to AggLayer, right? So that is how I see AggLayer as. Like, it does not extract a fixed rent from anybody. It's a service. Like, it's like Uber. You need a driver, then only you pay. If you don't need a driver and you are sitting at your home, you don't need to pay for it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is it goes beyond economics, right? Is like the way we really do think about it is completely free market. So even from like a governance perspective, for example, like, and this is important to like developers, right? Like we don't control the assets in your bridge. We don't control your sequencer. We don't do that with like any off-chain agreement. The intention here is it is extremely low barrier to entry, an extremely low barrier to, or no barrier to exit. Now the question is, don't you actually want that exit ability? And like why don't we want to prevent it? I mean, like one of the biggest benefits of optimistic rollups is it takes 7 days to leave your assets. So great, more liquidity for longer periods of time. But that's really not like the experience that you actually want. Right? Like the ZK experience of being able to withdraw your assets is more desirable. And same thing here for a chain, they should be able to leave. Now the question is then, isn't that like a really big risk? And the answer is like no, because the AggLayer is designed in a way that actually provides true value. And when you're getting true value from the connection to all these other chains with super low cost, low latency in a secure way, you have no reason to leave. And so we're building in a way that's like very confident that it is like value add for the chains. And they love the fact that they get to maintain all their sovereignty, decide how they want to charge fees, so frankly, all the details of how their chain acts and whether they're part of the AggLayer or not at any point in time.
I love that. I mean, not to, again, I love Cosmos a lot, but it's almost like what everyone kind of hoped IBC would be with Cosmos. It's sort of what the AggLayer is realizing, an internet of chains. And you join because of the benefits of being part of this United States of chains, right? Like the ability to move, this unified liquidity, the ability to move between chains really easily, all these users that are sitting over here. And yeah, you're welcome to leave, but you'd be leaving this huge pot of liquidity and huge pot of users and then stranding yourself out on an island. Why would you want to do that? So to kind of move on, one of the questions I get a lot is around MATIC and the Pol token, and is there going to be a second token in the Polygon ecosystem? This is the questions I get. Is there going to be a second token? How does it work, switching the Pol token to the MATIC token? What would you say to people that are maybe confused about how the relationship between the MATIC token and the Pol token, and how that all works?
First of all, like, I think we have done a little bit, like, not so much of a good job on, like, giving like frequent updates to the community on that front, and we have to share like a pretty big update and the timelines for that for the MATIC to Pol conversion, where everybody can simply go and convert. And for the end users, it should be very, very simple. If you are on an exchange, then you don't need to convert. Probably exchanges will convert for you. And if you are an on-chain user, you have it on-chain, you will have some straightforward UI to kind of convert in either direction, like MATIC to Pol, Pol to MATIC. But generally, like, I'm assuming a lot of people will upgrade from MATIC to Pol. And Pol, as we know that as we have already mentioned, that Pol will be the token for the AggLayer, which is providing this aggregation service as the bedrock of the Polygon ecosystem. And any chains connected into the AggLayer, can, like, as you know, like most of the chain, like immutable, and any chain connected into AggLayer, like OKX and all that, they all have their own tokens, so they can have their own tokens, and we expect more and more chains to launch and have their own tokens, build their own ecosystems, reward, incentivize users to come over there. So that we are very, very kind of supportive of that. If projects like however they want to, basically, I want to say that AggLayer is completely agnostic and provides this sovereign environment where chains can these chains can launch tokens and have full value accrual going to them and use AggLayer as a service. And in the previous point, I was also saying that about the service, like you could use the same service by directly submitting to Ethereum, right? But you end up paying maybe 50 to 100 times more. So another advantage of AggLayer is you are still doing the same thing as for the interoperability, but instead of submitting to Ethereum, you are submitting to AggLayer, which is which will be like probably 1 to 2 orders of magnitude cheaper than that. So poll to MATIC to poll, it's a update due on us, and we should be able to give more direction on that.
But one of the things we're really like paying attention to, and I agree with Sandeep, like we haven't done a good enough job of like updating folks on it, but is really, and frankly, this is part of the delay, is like ensuring this good kind of experience for users of the chain. We don't want people to think like, do I need MATIC? Do I need poll? We like need this clean cutoff. And this is true both from like a gas perspective and from a staking perspective. The initial kind of design, I'd say like mistake, honestly, that we made is that we were looking at this in like multiple phases where we'd have like go MATIC to poll, like we'd create poll, which we did. And then we would go and switch like the gas token to poll. And then we would later switch the staking token to poll. This would have created, honestly, like a massive amount of confusion. So what we did instead was we said, okay, that was a lower risk approach that allowed for like some of these changes to happen sooner. But what we decided instead is like, you know what, like let's actually just pause it and let's actually just focus on like how to make this the easiest user experience possible. And that is do it all at once. And what that means is spend way more time testing and working through it rather than doing this in phases. And so yesterday we did actually put out an update in our forums. It was pip by I think 42 around upgrading POS staking to use poll. And so folks can see this is still like in progress. And I'm very confident that in Q3 we'll make that switch over from like MATIC to poll for good.
Just to clarify, so what's happening is MATIC is becoming poll. Like those are the same token essentially. In people's minds, they could think it is the same token. If you have a MATIC token,
just a migration from one token to the other. Think of it as the same. This is why, like, I actually think everyone has just overly complicated this. MATIC equals poll. Done. That's all you need to know about. And as a result of that, you don't care which one you hold. Don't worry about it. MATIC is poll. And one day what you're going to see is you're going to be like, oh, I need to use poll for staking and I need to use poll for gas. Okay, cool. Now I don't have to ever think about MATIC again. Done.
So if somebody has $1,000 in MATIC, when the swap happens, it should be $1,000 in poll. $1,000 in MATIC, swap happens, now they have $1,000 in poll. Maybe they have a different amount of tokens. I don't know how that's going to all work or not, but the total USD value would be the same, correct?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we're not, there's not going to be like one swap. Like it's going to be, we are creating like a user experience that allows for this to be easy. So somebody will deposit MATIC into the POS bridge. When they withdraw, they'll withdraw poll. And same thing from like a staking perspective. So the idea here is like, we can't control it. Like we can't actually just like flip it for people. It's going to be users doing it, but we are effectively automating as much of it for the user as possible so that they don't, there is a contract, by the way, like there's a contract that exists right now that you can take your MATIC, you can deposit it and you'll get pullback. So that's like easy. People can do that. We don't want people to have to do that. And so we're just building it into the user experience so that when you come and you deposit your MATIC and it's time to get pulled back, you'll just get pulled back. Same thing, staking contract.
And where MATIC was used to secure the Polygon POS chain, that's all it's used for. The Polygon POS chain is used for gas, securing it, etc. The poll token is actually used for a lot of things. Can you just like run through really quickly some of those things it's used for?
Yeah, so basically, like to start with, like Pole will be used for AggLayer. AggLayer is going to be run by the Pole stakers, and that is the main and the primary use case of Pole. And then Pole will also take the responsibility that MATIC currently plays in the Polygon POS chain also. And then we have talked about it, but we are like working on some of the features wherein Polygon ecosystem will be able to use like Paul for various different kind of use cases also, like basically stake Polygon in one place and then use that to run like data availability committees, run some other chains which want decentralization and whatnot. So yeah.
Okay, so Matic today secures one single chain. Pole will secure potentially thousands or tens of thousands of different chains in various different functions beyond what Matic
Yes.
does today just for POS. And it is what did you guys call it? The super productive token. Is that what you guys call it?
Hyper-productive
token. I love that. You guys are so good at naming things in your marketing. It's like you guys are so on point. It's ridiculous, actually. Okay, so my last question.
You are too kind.
We're both smiling because
yeah, you are too kind. Like I mean, yeah. I mean, Marc like hits me like coming up with these names, and not only Marc, like a lot of other people, hate. I have a particular cool. I call it cool naming way, but like others don't find it cool.
Sandeep takes a lot of crap internally for his naming. Let's just put it that way.
but out of hundreds of names, few stick also. So I don't mind.
It's true. It's true.
Well, I do like the names. I think they are good. I don't know what your guys' internal things are about it with marketing and stuff, but
Jesse, what's your opinion on polygons?
Polygons. I mean, it makes it makes sense with polygons.
See, that's the whole point. It's a mix. You are not sure.
Well, I mean, Mantlets doesn't make sense either. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, I think part of the culture is always, it's like a little bit like messy, and that's what makes it good. It's a little bit homemade. And if you have it too corporate and cleaned up, then it doesn't, nobody likes it. So it's got to be a little bit silly. Otherwise it'll never stick. So, that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. My last question is, Polygon POS is becoming a layer 2. It's becoming a Validium. I think this is actually a really big deal, okay? Because as soon as Polygon POS is a full-on layer 2, suddenly everyone in the ETH community is talking about Polygon. They're referencing Polygon. I've heard from Ethereum, like some of the bigger people in the Ethereum community, that the reason they don't talk about Polygon, because they asked them, is because, well, it's not a real layer 2 yet. But when it is, we would love to talk about it, because look at all those users. Look at all that liquidity. Look at how much this brings to the L2 landscape. And so I'm really excited about this happening. When do you guys expect that to happen?
So that will happen in 2 stages. So first, Polygon POS will connect into the AggLayer with the pessimistic proof. As I said, that AggLayer has 2 layers of proof, pessimistic proofs and then validity proofs. So it will start with pessimistic proof, which should happen rather soon. Marc would probably have more clearer this thing internally maybe. And then the full validity proofs is also like, I mean, we have the type 1 prover. There's like extensive testing going on multiple fronts. So whenever we feel like, okay, now it's at a very good place, we go with the rule.
But it is worth. I'll take the a little bit antagonistic side of this and say, people don't talk about Polygon as an L2, but there's a lot of chains that are talked about as L2s that are not really L2s. And so I think one of the more interesting things, but very seriously, is actually how narrative has changed over time, which is, Polygon took a lot of crap for saying that it was an L2 back in the day. If you now go on L2 Beats and you look at all of the chains on L2 Beat, what you see is that most of the chains have less security guarantees than Polygon POS has, and even look less like L2s than Polygon. And so I think the narrative has definitely shifted to the point where I would argue that Polygon POS should already be on L2 Beat. But to your point, that whole thing completely goes away when POS is upgraded to a Validium.
I mean, look at all this stuff we just talked about. The AggLayer, all this stuff is amazing. But honestly, if you were to just zoom all the way in on the POS chain, it's incredible. Like, I don't understand why it doesn't get more attention with, especially like it is so, in my opinion, so comparable to Solana with like speed, the cheap cost, the amount of users, like the user experience. Like it is very on par with that. There's not like this big difference. Like I use both all the
Jesse,
time.
like, when somebody was saying that unfortunate reality is that if Polygon POS was a L1, right, by the number of users, TVL and all that, it would be, in terms of its value and everything else, it would be right up there with the Solana, Avalanche and all that. But because it's a, this thing, like, that's the sad part of crypto ecosystems also, that the real usage and real fundamentals are not looked at. Narrative, that this is an L1, this is an L2 and all that. Like, how does it matter? It's a blockchain. How many users are there? And what kind of usage is there? That should be dependent on the thing. So yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation, but yeah, it is what it is.
It's an attention game, and too many people don't understand crypto. So what they do is they look to the podcasters, the like major influencers in the space, to tell them what's cool and what's not cool, because they don't understand it for themselves. And those people are talking about the things they're interested in or that they know about, but like so much is missed in that picture. And I think Polygon is one of the biggest pieces that's missed in that picture. And I think it when it does transition to a Validium, that's when it gets back and started to that picture where they're all talking about it again. Hopefully it gets some of that attention that it deserves, because what you guys are doing is way cooler than a Fire Dancer upgrade. I'm telling you that, like, that is the silliest thing to get excited about to me versus the AggLayer. Are you kidding me? And so I am excited for the day that Polygon gets the attention that it deserves, and it's coming. It's going to happen this cycle. Mark my words, this cycle, the AggLayer is going to be a focus of the entire space. It is going to have more users, more activity than I think most people can imagine. And anyone sleeping on that, just like you listened to this podcast, you heard everything we had to say. How can you deny at this point that it's like inevitable? You can't stop it at this point.
I would only say that the Fire Dancer is also, like, technologically, engineering wise, it's a marvel piece. But as I said, that only thing is the difference in the mission. Like Fire Dancer, like, let's say, expects to achieve maybe 2x more transactions on Solana chain. I don't know, like, maybe it's the same number of transactions but more stability and all that. But whatever it achieves, my whole point, that's why I said that number of TPS, that N, is still a constant. Maybe it's a bigger constant. Instead of 50,000, it's 100,000, 200,000, 500,000. But that's not our mission that we are building. We are building N equals infinity, right? And that's the case for AggLayer.
What a beautiful way to end it. Marc, Sandeep, it has been great having you on. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for all your support to the Polygon ecosystem and who's building on Polygon. We're really thankful.
Yeah, fully agree.
As always, this is investing advice. None of this is us telling you to go buy Pol or MATIC or anything like that. I do hold a lot of MATIC. I believe in these things, and that's why I have a lot of MATIC tokens myself. And so just be aware of those things, and make sure you're doing your own research when it comes to all of these things.